Alrighty, what's going on, Macro Perspective peeps? Oh, man, we've got a good one for you today. Round two with Andrew Coates. It's about 2 years since we've had Andrew on. Last time we've had him on talking about his journey in the fitness world, being a writer, content creator, talking about career paths for how to become a great coach. But today, we really want to just talk about what we're passionate about. It's been about 2 years and a lot has happened in Andrew's world, in Marcos and I's world, the fitness and health wellness world as well. And as much as Andrew's been on the cutting edge of this stuff over the last 15 years, maybe we talk things that are passionate about today. Some of the things that are highlighted probably are going to be more so in Andrew's verse, what he's passionate about, what he's seen recently. So we're going to go there today. But yeah, Andrew, how you been? Thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, what's going on in your neck of the woods?
Well, I appreciate you guys asking me. There's kind of something to this. Again, I know that it's mostly your community, but oftentimes people are afraid to ask, to other, just to get someone on a podcast or to interact. And yeah, everybody has got to guard their time and their boundaries a little bit and understand what their value systems are. But one of the things that has been really good at my career is I've gotten a lot of invitations to come on episodes like this. And I've always graciously said yes. I've always done my best to make it work. I value it highly. I think it's a big give of your guys' time and everybody listening. So everybody listening, thank you for actually listening to this one. And, again, the ongoing effort to listen to this podcast. And, I'm going to just say this right away. If anybody is listening and you've never given Seamus and Marcos a review and you're listening to this all the time, go give them guys a review. Okay. Just do that little thing. Now, just not while you're driving, please. Okay. So, but no, I appreciate you guys having me on. So thanks.
No, and thank you. And the impetus for this was our coworker, and he's been on this podcast, Jason White. He shared your most recent episode, but one of the most recent ones as of today's recording, which was Joel Jameson, which we're amazing fans of as well. He's put a lot into the fitness world with his HRV, with his books, with his courses. So, I'm a religious follower of his. So I was like, listen to that podcast. I'm like, yo, it's just like a comment on Facebook and just reaching out. Yeah, Andrew, congrats to you. Over 360 plus episodes. That's a lot of guests. That's a lot of knowledge you put out. Man, amazing. I think 15 plus years in the industry now. Amazing stuff.
It's been, I look back and I'm like, oh, how the hell did this happen? I fell into this. I literally fell into this industry because I needed a job. Fell in love with it pretty quickly, right? It's sort of it busts the passion hypothesis. You get passionate about something that you tend to love. And I think this is kind of applicable to everybody. And on the specifics of Joel, Joel Jameson is someone everybody would get a lot out of because he's fairly legendary as a, UFC champion coach. But a lot of the stuff he's been dabbling in now is really geared towards the balance of strength conditioning, the research on longevity, how these things impact it. And we're all caring more and more about this. You're only going in one direction when it comes to, the aging process, right? And I think anybody listening is very conscientious of healthy things, which dramatically slows down a lot of things that we attribute to aging, which in fact can be largely lifestyle. And there's a big chunk of research that came out, I feel like it was about a year ago and a bit, where it's our metabolism does not slow down in any meaningful way until about the age of 60, then it starts dropping off. And so all of that stuff that's changing as we get to 30, 40, 50. Now, it's lifestyle. Now, there's a lot of things that change in life. Now, for sure, there are other things that are impacted by age. Rate of recovery for, our ability to be active, you go out and have a night of drinking, in your early 20s versus your mid 40s, trust me, you feel a very big difference on how you recover from that shit. But also working out, right? The recovery is not the same, at 51 as it is at 23. So you also have to be mindful of the balance and the intensity of how you're approaching these things. So there's a sweet spot.
Yeah, for sure. I guess it was kind of in my early years as I was 5, 6, 7 days a week of doing something because it was sports specific, right? And also the strength elements and then the conditioning and all that stuff. And then fast forward, 10 years into doing this and coaching people, it's I feel like the sustainable way to go is if I can get people to do 3 days a week, hell, 2 days is going to be super sufficient. And it's again, just it's cool to see more progression, more positive benefits for people in those kind of aging criterias. Because for our day jobs, Andrew, it's our average patient that comes into our longevity care clinic is definitely going to be probably around the age of 53 to start, right? So they're kind of approaching that 60-year-old time horizon. And again, if it wasn't realistic up until 53 to do 5 days a week, it probably won't continue to be realistic that happens. And the amount of effort that people are willing to put forth, as you do get older, you probably just don't have the same quote unquote vitality as you did when you're in your 20s. And the zest for it probably wanes a little bit because you're 30 years into training and, just so much shit changes in that period of time. But understanding that, again, I guess the preconceived notions or whatever was the literature back in the the dawn of the internet, right? Versus now, it's like you're trying to disseminate all this information, sift through noise, and really kind of just stick to something that's going to be realistic. So, I mean, like that was kind of like the genesis of granted, okay, so it's been 2 years since you've been on here. So what we did actually, we grabbed our old transcript, chopped it into ChatGPT, said, okay, what did we talk about? How do we skip over that shit? And, obviously like, how do we make this a more engaging thing? But like, what's changed for you in 2 years in terms of how you're approaching people that you in the content that you're writing?
All right. So there's sort of a realization, and this may sound a little career relevant, but I think it'll mean something to everybody. I've traveled extensively. I've spoken at a lot of conferences, and those conferences range from more strength conditioning based stuff to very business centric. And some of them are, almost like online trainer mentorship type stuff. And I do coach people online. I have a small one-on-one online coaching business. I have a one-to-many group coaching business, and that one does really well. But I'm still a full-time in-person trainer. And in my travels, as I spent more time around people, and there are friends of mine who are legitimately successful and they're fully in an online thing, or they built credible businesses. I'm very close friends with Nick Shaw, and I'm friends with Mike Gizertel, the founders of Renaissance Periodization. They're now a sponsor of mine. They're great. And these guys are a literal juggernaut and a success in the industry, right? And part of that is just really, really smart stuff that they built. I mean, Mike is a unique, he's a unicorn of both intellect and personality, and he plays for great media. So, there's a lot of survivorship bias, right? It's hard to replicate what they've done and the timing of when they got in the market as well. And people don't understand, like, timing of how certain careers and things have developed is incredibly relevant. This goes back to like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs in the early, dawn of like internet-based, computer-based stuff. Like there's a very fine window where they had access and they were a little ahead of the game. You can't recreate Apple right now. I mean, there could be some sort of like modern iteration of what is the next big thing. Maybe it's OpenAI, for example. You mentioned ChatGPT, right? Like that would be the thing right now. But to go back, what I sometimes felt like, and here I am, an extremely busy, successful in-person coach. And I'm around these coaches. They're talking about their 7-figure businesses. Now, there are the people who are legitimately successful and they don't talk like this. And then there's the people, and I was like, kind of had this ew about like, there's just a lot of bragging and status seeking stuff. And it's sort of this insecure status seeking behavior. And everybody knows when we're around people like this. And they talk about their 7-figure businesses. But then, after a little bit of time, you're on their media and they're restructuring things and they're burnt out. And I realize with a lot of the online coaches in the space, they are struggling because they're relying upon social media, over relying on social media to kind of feed what they're doing. They are struggling to find consistency and stability within their clientele online because I think there's a tremendous amount of noise in that space. And while I think you can do a wonderful job with maintaining a great relationship with online clients, I suspect a lot of coaches are also falling prey to the desire to systemize, automate, and scale themselves out of actually interacting with people. So for the listener, if you start thinking about the way that things change in our life, the way that we consume stuff. Like, for example, the convenience of online banking. That's an easy one, right? That cuts down on most things. Every once in a while, you got to go into a bank branch. Okay, cool, no problem. But most of us don't necessarily want to outsource everything we do to automation. And I think there's a lot of coaches who think, well, I'm going to charge big ticket price and build these systems, automate stuff, maybe even like chatbots and you name it. That's a big pet peeve of mine. And minimize the amount of work I'm actually doing and the time I'm interacting with people. I make a lot of money. Now, trust me, there are going to be a lot of companies, Renaissance Periodization is a good example, who are going to have much cheaper options that are better quality, and they're just going to decimate you. Over this time, I'm seeing all these coaches talk big, and I realize how vulnerable they are and how inconsistent they are. And I'm around my friends who are still one-on-one in-person coaches or facility owners, and they have thriving in-person businesses because they're still in the business. And that's where sustainable success lives. And I believe there can be coaches who do well in the online space. And I think there are coaches who can scale it and build teams. Great. And then maybe your human interaction is with the people who are working for you instead of the clients, right? That's okay. But I think more and more as we came out of we forget that COVID and the lockdowns weren't that long ago and people jumped out and thrived with in-person interaction. They craved it. That I think there will be a portion of the population that will self-select to automated, algorithmic, systemized based stuff. But I think there's a lot of people who want that human connection. They want to come into either a community or some kind of relationship with their coach. And that's going to be the biggest lever. And having spent a few years now around these environments, something that I was sort of questioning wait a minute, am I falling behind or am I not doing it right? I actually now believe I've been doing it right the whole time. And a lot of other people have been blatantly misled. Is that fair? And
Yes.
If you are the end user and the end listener who, I mean, I think it's a great idea to find coaching and support in whatever form you like. But I still think that, someone that you have a relationship with and trust in, that will be there when you need, instead of replying within like 3 to 5 days with a very canned message. I mean, even for my online one-to-many group program, the thing that differentiates it, and I'm very proud of, I mean, I've set up, they all get the template. There's a lot of customizability in it. They can ask me stuff in the group or message me one-on-one. I will always respond to them. But they know and trust that when they need something, whether it's look at a form video or answer a question or help them out in whatever shape or form, they individually and collectively see when I'm responding. And even for the member who may be very independent, but is watching in the group and then sees me promptly responding to the other member's stuff, those other people still experience it. And even if they never need to tap into me on, a reasonably quick response to a problem, they trust that it's there and it enhances their experience, even if they're not actually benefiting from it directly.
Yeah.
So, and for anybody who's listening, I mean, because you obviously are consumers of fitness lifestyle stuff, look for that in who you're working with. Okay. And then for the casual coach, I mean, there's reasonable boundaries. You can't have sound notifications and answering shit in the middle of the night. But I think you also have to realize that there's promise. And sometimes this business mentorship stuff is promising you what I think is a lie, and I think is going to be unsustainable and doesn't do what's in the best interest of your clients or ultimately you in the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Well, that's some deep stuff right there. Marcos, I'm gonna hand it off to you, but like, it's funny because like the last 2 years, Marcos and I went through an infinity loop of all these things and like scale, automate. And then Marcos and I just came back to, let's slow things way down.
Mm-hmm.
Let's really focus on developing our relationships, not with the people we're trying to get in the door, but also the ones that's already in it, and making sure we're really connecting with them. Everything else started taking care of itself. You know what I'm saying, right, Marcos?
Yeah, I mean the in it and on it, but you got to be doing them both. Like, I mean, for in perpetuity, right? I know, like some people say, well, if you're only working in your business, you're not working on it, so you can't grow and you can't scale. But I'm like, I mean, if you're working in it, then you realize where the value actually lands, and asking good questions to those people that are using your services is far more important for the sustainability of. Maybe you never have to actually sell a new person because they never leave.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a sustainable business plan. What if your retention rate's 99%? You only ever lost one person of the 100. That'd be insane. But like that, if you strive for something like that in excellence and deliverability, you can definitely, the other people by proxy are likely going to be influenced by those people that you're affecting, even if it's not directly with you. So to me, like, it scales very quickly, even though those people may not necessarily be working with you one-to-one or in the one-to-many element. Like you're saying, Andrew, it's like Seamus said, it was like we were really worried about like, let's build a system and do this and create a product and try to sell it. And I was like, who are we going to sell to, dude? We don't have enough people that are like knocking at our door to like buy this like quote unquote coaching program, even though we believe wholeheartedly like the solutions that are in there are really what people are desiring long term. But it's like, what do we need to actually do? We got to get back to square one. So, we go immerse ourselves in more gym cultures that would be willing to have us come in there and talk about a good message and create a fun, fostering environment for people to get after shit. And then from there, we say, hey, you're going to sign up for this challenge. But in this challenge, and this can't be done without another human, in all honesty, because yeah, we could maybe create some automations with GPTs and shit, but to actually have that other person that's like, hey, so-and-so, and this person's type of response, like she has another emotional connection. I'm referring to Rachel, who does our backend stuff. She also helps me in my business. And she's like, hey, you need to go talk with XYZ people because in my follow-up with them as an assistant role, right, we know that they need a little bit more from you today. I was like, perfect, let me give them a call. So now we're facilitating more of this connection-based kind of model. And will we have 2,000 people at one point? Hell no, probably not ever. But if we can connect with 50, 60, 70, 100 people incredibly well, and we both have a really desirable thing and we have a wait list and we can't service them, hey, cool, then we can cross new bridges and we can try to find another coach that's going to deliver that. And then also tell that person, hey, like for Seamus, for example, as we work on this next thing for business, essentially, it's like, Seamus, I need you to have a Rachel. I need you to have a duplication person like that. So we can have this tight, small team that we're having them handle maybe more of those daily messaging interactions. And then for us to actually like be like, hey, yes, we're talking to you once a week, but do you need a second thing? Granted, I know there's not necessarily a macro emergency that goes on with people, but sometimes it can seemingly feel that way, right? Like you can feel as though like this week's just feeling off. just, call someone for 15 minutes. It makes a world of a fucking difference. And I would much rather be doing that in today's world than automate and just never actually know the person.
There's something else in here that's underpinning all this. I think that there's a lot of coaches as well who, because they feel insecure about what they're charging, then they try to create more things for the client to do. Now, what is the main obstacle in most people's lives that we're working with? What is it?
Shit to do.
And not enough time, right?
Yeah.
So they feel overwhelmed. So you got a coach who's going, well, here are all these, and modules can be useful if they're specific to, someone can do them when they need them, that sort of thing. But oftentimes is you give someone a fairly simple approach to things. Give them a workout structure and a frequency that works for them and a support in the form that they need. And then if they trust that you're there when they need you, then that's often the most valuable thing. It's just simply the trust in knowing that your coach is going to be there, as opposed to, well, let's create busy work. So that way it seems like I'm doing more for this client. They're doing more, but it's probably actually going to increase the friction. So I think it's another affliction that people have. And, and again, for the end user, if you're consuming fitness or other anything, I mean, my biggest frustration when I'm using any sort of service is I've got fucking around with like stupid shit to use that service. I want a clean, simple, easy to access thing. I mean, Amazon is as popular as it is for a variety of reasons, but one of those things is, my God, is it ever fast and easy to order, right? The one click, everything. It's crazy low friction. And because of the way that the internet now is, we have been conditioned to expect that in more places. So if I have a higher friction experience, and that, funny enough, that higher friction experience might have actually been amazing 7-8 years ago, right? Yeah. And listen, I'm old enough. I remember the screeching modem dial-up internet, okay, and how slow that crap was. All right. I remember getting my first Nintendo Entertainment System at 8 years old. Okay. I remember all that shit. I remember having one television channel as a kid before we got a bunch of cable, and then we ended up with like 15 channels. And back then, with Canadian Much Music, there was actually music videos on Much Music. Okay, that's how long ago that was. So we're spoiled in having things like Amazon as an option. And even other companies that might be more specialized in a specific type of product, because the shipping takes so much longer. People are trained to expect the speed of shipping from something like an Amazon. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, and again, you can bells and whistles and make people jump through hoops, but get really clear on what actually makes someone's life easier, what makes it easier for someone to go and do the workout, to eat better, to sleep better, and to feel less stressed. And if we're actually adding stress to that by creating a lot of shit for them to do, I don't think it's the answer.
No, you're 100% not. You're 100% correct. Marcus, you're going to say something?
No, you have to adapt with the times. I mean, it's even with, Amazon spoiled us so much that it impacts me and my other job. It's like the friction of like a click here, a click there. I'm like, dude, like, this is the best solution we have in 2025. Like, I want it to be seamless for me so that I don't want to not do the work and I can actually deliver a higher quality service to the people that are paying a premium, and it would be nice to be like, yeah, I only have my own business, but, shocker, everybody that's listening that's been here a while, like, Seamus and I have multiple roles, granted they're related, but ultimately, like, when there is friction, even in your day job, you're going to kind of resent it and find ways to just kind of, dick around a bit more. And I don't know. My physician that I work under, he asked me this question. He's like, dude, what do you want to tell your kids to be when they grow up? And I had to like pause for a second. I was like, I literally can't think of anything because I don't know what will happen in 2 to 5 years. The way that I'm perceiving all of this exponential growth with the ability to access information. And the one thing I said, the only thing that stands out to me is something that would actually be FaceTime with another human. To me, like, whatever that is, they have to get in front of people. So going back to what you said earlier is like, you still have a strong in-person practice, right? In coaching. And that might be, again, like kind of bomb-proof at this stage in the game, because like you can go to, the RP Hypertrophy Act, we can just plug them there, right? And I'm sure that it's going to deliver a fantastic product. It's going to go through all these things. It's like, it's learning you as you're doing it, but it still doesn't replace having that person just kind of say, hey, you got more in the tank. You like, and then they just trust you because the way that you're approaching them is just so unique, and it's elegant in its own way because you have like this masterful experience that you've developed over 15 plus years, right? So it's crazy. I can't even think. It blew my mind when we talked about that.
At a certain point, there's only so much technical coaching that you can do with people. I mean, like I've had clients over the years who they still always have this like funny way about they move. So you kind of like have to still cue a few things, but
Yeah.
there comes a point where there's not much you can teach them about, how to move or change up enough things to teach them new shit. So guess what? The conversations end up having to be about other things in life. And so you have to find a common ground. And if someone's training with a coach for an hour or two a week or 3, you're spending way more time. And both ways. I spend way more time with my clients than I do with my close friends. And I'm very lucky. I've got a lot of close friends that I do plan regular things with. They enrich my life, but there's a lot of close friends I don't get to see very often. We can pick up where we left off. But this is related. In order to, I think for the career side of stuff, because again, we keep tipping over there, but I think it still applies to anybody. You have to find sustainability within your career, because how many people are feeling on the edge of burnout, their jobs are really stressful, and it has a lot of elements that are unpleasant. And I don't think everybody can I can automatically change this, or I can go and leave my career and go do something else. I think it's an arrogant thing to just say, hey, you just have to go rip off the Band-Aid and go do something else. But I'm lucky there's some survivorship bias here, but I tell all my clients this. And sometimes they'll be very grateful. I still contract at the gym that I've been at for years, but I'm only there 3 half days a week. I now have a decked out home basement gym. I have turf, sled. I just bought a pendulum squat machine. There's a glute drive down there, leg press, cable tower. There is a ton of shit in there. Okay. And my clients, who, especially the ones who live in the neighborhood, just like can't believe that they get to have an hour to themselves uninterrupted, training with me. But I remind them, it's like, this works both ways. In order for me to sustain the sheer volume of training sessions I do, plus all of the other career-based stuff, the podcast, the writing, the public speaking, then I have to be fulfilled by it all, and I have to enjoy the experience. So every client that works with me, I have to look forward to and want to spend time with. And they sense that, they feel that. And if someone lifts up your energy, then you're going to feel really good, even in the sessions leading up to, because I've remembered in the past, having clients that I just dreaded dealing with. And for a variety of reasons. It's not that I hated the clients or anything like that. Like, you start resenting clients, that's a bad place to be. You don't want that. But the rare client was someone that you like felt stress or apprehension. And maybe that client was later in the day. Well, guess what? All the other clients leading up to it feel that, because you're distracted, because it's on your mind. Whereas if I'm looking forward to everybody I work with because I like them, I'm friends with them, it's fun to spend that hour with them, and then I know that I get to work out afterwards, guess what? I've been a very positive, upbeat energy. They feel that. And so what do they? It's the law of attraction. Those people have a positive experience. They want to return. They refer other people. And even if it's subtle, this sort of thing adds up. So, I think it comes back to look around in your world and, all right, where is friction? What do you resent? What do you not like? And who are the people that stress you out? And then who are the people you enjoy being around? What are the things that you actually look forward to, you like doing? And this stuff has a very powerful effect on your entire day. And you can't control all of it. But at least in my world, I have a tremendous amount of control. I'm lucky in that career. I mean, it doesn't come with, there's risk involved with that, being, an entrepreneurial business. I still think it's actually more flexible, and I think it's more stable than, a quote salaried thing, because there's so many ways that one can lose their salaried job, their livelihood in a snap of a finger, right? That just happens. Right? People can get laid off through no fault of their own, or you fuck up and you make a mistake and poof, there you go. Whereas I can sense shocks or changes. Recently, I came back from a trip and I had a few clients finish up, and my online one-on-one coaching was down a little bit, which actually gives me more time. I like it. But, I was kind of like feeling, it's below a threshold where I'm comfortable. So I started hustling. I just posted on my Instagram story. A couple of people reached out based on that. And just some other people came out of the woodwork for different reasons. All of a sudden, within the space of a week, I picked up 6 new clients, filled my schedule right back up. They're all great. And all of a sudden now I'm like, oh shit, where am I going to find the time? Right. So, but it is the law of attraction, but it's also the energy you put out in the world. And one of those 6 people, I sat down with her and her son today. She hired me to train her 17-year-old son. Really nice young man, is in an MMA-based stuff. And she told me that she'd been a member at at the facility I train at, and had seen me work with people before. And that's just my everyday. But my energy and how I spend the time with those people in that relationship, while on one hand, we tell people, people at the gym, nobody's watching you. They're all concerned with themselves. But guess what? Fitness professionals, the people in that space are aware of you. And even if they're thinking, well, I would never need a trainer, they do kind of rank the people in that space as, all right, who's most professional, who's most knowledgeable, who's busiest, who's focused, who's smiling and engaged, who is fucking around with their phone and just looks like they want to be anywhere else. And I've worked with a broad spectrum of different trainers in a couple different spaces. And, it's certainly the old gym that I used to work at, the commercial gym. I got 90% of the floor walk-up business. And there was a reason for that, right? When I left that facility, all my clientele wanted to come with me. None of them wanted to stick around in the old place or go with any of the old trainers. So there are lessons there.
Yeah, there definitely are. No, I love that. And I think Man, I want to keep going down this career path thing too.
Let's go over to the stuff that's practical.
I
That's the
want
fitness
to go
lifestyle stuff. We said we were going to do that, and
Yeah,
we
I
got
want to go
hijacked.
like some of the things that are, in the last few years, like a lot has happened in the fitness and health and wellness space that
Hmm.
might have affected your training, might have affected how other people train, just their lifestyle. I mean, the big one I'm always thinking about, like it's always a conversation day to day with Marcos, is not like GLPs, for example, right? This whole conversation around like health span and like you've got big gurus in this space now. The Liver King Netflix doc dropped like 2 days ago. Like all these different things. What is
Biological age versus chronological age, and
yeah.
do these things even have any validity to them? I'm questioning it quite a bit, even though it's a big step in what we're after in our our clinical space. So it's interesting, and like Seamus is saying, like these tactics or these things that go on, like, and you see it hand in hand. I mean, how many times have people come to you, they get the workout in, but they're not changing right away? And why is that?
All right. Well, I guess we could answer that. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on there.
Yeah.
Part of it is perception. I mean, surface level change usually takes a little bit of time. Muscle growth, fat loss, etc. Also, there's how many different things probably need to change. Usually nutrition's the major lever when it comes to losing body fat, which is a significant goal of most people, right? Big, stronger. I mean, neurologically, you can, if someone's learning a brand new thing on set number 3, they're probably going to be stronger than set number 2 because they actually like just had some motor learning happen. And then certainly in the coming weeks, they come back week over week over week, they're going to feel stronger because the neurological adaptations. And then, you give it several weeks into months or whatever, you've built new muscle and you have the structure to express more force, produce more force, and you're stronger. Okay, cool. So that's how that works. So yeah, the muscle side of it takes a little bit of time. But okay, someone's been training, but they're not eating enough protein, or their hydration's mediocre, or their sleep isn't good. Well, it's just simply going to slow down the rate at which we're going to see positive changes. It's all positive if you're working out, even if the other things aren't very good. In fact, we seem to now understand, I think there's some research recently that points to, even if you're short on sleep, but you work out, it actually helps offset. Now, I don't think you can carry this into infinity because one of the biggest drivers of increased acute injury risk is poor sleep. So if you are shorting your sleep consistently, if there are other things that are diminishing your recovery capacity, and then you're always beating the living bejesus out of yourself in the gym every single day, then you cannot recover from the load, volume, and intensity. And that's just an injury mechanism right there. And then if you get hurt, then you're worse off, right? Now, there are a lot of ways managing around injuries. Like there's a lot you can do. But I still think part of it is perception and patience. And it kind of goes to now everything else we can get so much faster. We talked about Amazon, that, change, lifestyle change, identity change, habit change is a slower process. It just is. I think there are some people that can kind of like flip a switch and go all in. But the people in my experience who can flip that switch and go all in, they probably have been there before. They know how to do it. So it means that somewhere along the way, life changed or the switch went off. So I find those people tend to be a bit more prone to on and off behavior. And so you have to kind of watch them carefully because, of course, if you pull out a linchpin behavior and all of a sudden they just fall right off track because they've given themselves permission or they got busy again. And all of a sudden now they don't have the bandwidth to do the brute force high volume form of exercise and nutrition that they're used to doing. So I just think that it's a slow burn to shift identity and habits. And I think those are fundamental underlying basis for sustainable change in the long run. There's something you said about chronological age and biological age, and there's something bigger here, and I want to grab this. I think the stuff, except for what you said about GLP-1s, because those actually are there's some really good stuff there. Most of the rest of this stuff, when it comes to the biohacking or whatever, it's a distraction. It's fluff. I mean, if you want to think about the difference between biological age versus chronological age, that's just like dressed up, a much simpler concept. We are the age that we are. Okay, cool. That's biological age. End of story. We just know what we are. Hey, like I turned 47. I'm physically 47 years old by age. But then there's like just how healthy are we? Okay. And so what is the quality of our life? What's our metabolic health like? And encapsulated within all that is what we're probably talking about as our biological age. So we don't need to dress it up as, biological age, or try to measure it, because all of a sudden you get all these measures and scores, and then you're trying to track all this shit, which means you're probably spending a lot of money on something that you don't need. And it becomes another thing to get stressed out about, right?
Yeah, it becomes like another marker. You're like, shit. If you're doing, because like, for example, some companies, they'll do their biomarkers of like 3 to 6 months. And now like, it's there every 3 months. And you're like, what did I do this last 90 days to make me 2 years older then? what I am, or 10 years older, or something like that. Yeah, definitely makes sense.
And I think people can get really caught up in this shit or distracted by it or hear some guru talk about it. And then they lose focus on the fact, well, the thing that's going to positively influence this in a meaningful way, still regular exercise, getting a decent amount of cardio, zone 2 or maybe some other like stuff that's sprinklings of higher intensity stuff, improve your VO2 max. But even getting caught up in trying to measure your VO2 max is pointless for almost everybody. Like the average person does not need to worry about what their actual VO2 max is, because the VO2 max, there's a certain heritability about it, but there's also certain behaviors will drive its improvement. So just go do those behaviors and don't worry about the score. It's almost like tracking your sleep score. If you become obsessed and stressed about tracking your sleep score, and that's creating stress that might interfere with the quality of your sleep, well, I think it just keep it simple. Can we create sleep opportunity? I love the idea of sleep opportunity because it's the window that is non-negotiable for me. A lot of people, one of their problems is just their window for sleep is negotiable. They'll stay up and watch extra Netflix or fuck around on their phones or whatever, and then they're just not giving themselves enough time. And so I have a non-negotiable boundary of 8 hours of sleep opportunity, and I sleep generally pretty well. I usually wake up a couple times in the middle of the night, no big deal. I fall right back asleep. I'm pretty good at not being plugged into like highly stressful shit or distracting shit or on screens or whatever. Certainly the hour before bed, I can control that. Not too bad. Okay, I don't drink too much fluid right before bed, and when I sleep, I try to keep my room cool, and I now wear an eye mask. Simple. I can take that when I travel. If I have this really elaborate sleep ritual, I've heard Andy Galpin talk about this on his podcast, and it makes so much sense. If you have this huge sleep ritual, which may even be time consuming, it might be cost consuming, and yeah, there's these like type of beds that you can adjust the temperature or what have you, but you can't necessarily travel with that shit. So I don't travel a lot, but it seems like I do. I travel for conferences or what have you, and you're different time zones, so that's already going to negatively impact your sleep. I can take my eye mask. I will turn, if I'm in a hotel room, I always turn the AC up and cool off the room a little bit. I'm mindful, very seldom drink anymore. I find alcohol obviously is very detrimental on sleep. And I'm not interested in lecturing other people on like, even a little bit of casual drinking. Every once in a while I'll put up a post about like a buddy of mine has a post on moderate drinking, right? And there's always zealots that come out and scream at you like, no amount of alcohol is okay, it's poison, blah, blah. It's like, you fucking idiots do not understand the point of like, first of all, the poison's in the dose, and a little bit is not a big deal. There's a big reason why for a very long time we thought a small to moderate amount of alcohol was net health positive. We believe that. The data pointed to that. And then companies went digging into red wine, and red wine seemed to be positively associated with health benefits. And then they did all this research on, I always think I say it wrong, resveratrol.
Yep.
And that was a dead end. And then what ended up happening is more clarity, more data, whatever. It's like, no amount of alcohol is like net good. A little bit, minor net negative. Heavy drinking is very aggressively becomes very detrimental to health. But what was happening was the people in all this research who were light drinkers tended to be social drinkers.
Yeah.
And so the power of the social interaction was so fucking potently good for metabolic health, longevity, as a buffer against neurodegenerative disease, this sort of stuff, depression. And I think it's hard to measure these individually, but it's all encapsulated within this. It was so positive that it was way more powerful than the minor negative of actually consuming some alcohol. So it looked like the alcohol was a cause, but in fact, alcohol was just noise and clouding what was actually the real thing.
Yeah.
So there's something to get clear on. Like, that's a powerful lever to.
100%. I love it. No, I was going to make a cheeky little joke like, dang, Whoop 5.0 is mad at Andrew right now because you're quantifying all this sleep and they're tracking all that stuff. And it's like,
what's fun?
Wearables.
What's funny?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll shout some stuff out. So I was actually just listening to Modern Wisdom, Chris Williams' podcast, and Will Ahmed is the founder of Whoop, and he's on it. It's actually a great interview. He also just, they talk a little bit about why CrossFit is in the toilet, and I'm not even pulling a bunch anymore. But I mean, I want to be so positive about CrossFit, but my interactions with like CrossFit coaches, like CrossFit users are generally speaking nice people, but my personal interaction with CrossFit coaches have always been so toxically awful that I'm just like, fuck this. Now, I don't like judging whatever. And if you're a CrossFit coach listening, I'm like, hey, you're probably a wonderful person, but
you're calling me out, Andrew. I used to be a CrossFit coach, but I mean, I also felt some type of way too, though. I felt like
you're nice.
As much as I love the methodology, there were certain elements of, as I went deeper into the education part of it, there was like a dogmatic approach to everything. And I was like, it can be more nuanced than that. And this isn't just the only way to get to an end result. And you know what I mean? And I think that they kind of are dying by the sword a little bit now, in a sense of that kind of, I mean, I used to kind of run a joke, and they might revoke my credential, but like, it was like CrossFit. It was like forging eliteist fitness is what I wanted to like call it half the time, because I felt as if when I went into a room that I was never good enough with those people that were a level 3 or a level 4. But I'm like, that's like no way to like kind of sell the methodology to like new people wanting to grow in that space. Like I was like, now I'm like, I don't love mentioning it, but like it does have a place near and dear to my heart, because you know what it did it really well was, it's how I found my wife. It's how I found a community of people that like to work
Community.
out. That's
Community.
That's exactly it.
Yep. And that's probably, funny enough, it's probably the most potent lever that has helped people, is the fact that it's done. I mean, it's one of the best things we've ever seen in the fitness industry for creating community, right?
That's insane. We had a podcast recently with Dr. John Nice. It's going to come out in a few weeks. He was talking about bones. He talked about like fracture proofing your bones, and he's the most peer reviewed, most cited like bone person. It was so funny. He was saying that like there's serotonin receptors, there's melatonin receptors on your bones, and like a lot of these different receptors come from community-based things. So a lot of people that are getting older, if they're not seeing people, yes, we talk about medication, we talk about alcohol, we talk about lifestyle, but what about people? Like, are you hanging out with people, and how's that helping out with different hormones and different things to help fracture proof your bone? And I was like, dang, go hang out with people, and get bothered by them and have community. I think that's why in Sardinia, all these like blue zone studies, it's like these guys are living to 100 plus, because they're like the grandkids are like, hey, where's grandpa, where's grandma, and they're walking over up and down these hills.
And you're onto something there. I mean, there's all this talk about blue zone stuff, and it's kind of like the alcohol stuff. There's some misunderstandings about what's going on, and it's not the specific diets. Now, by and large, the nutritional ideologies and access to the traditional foods and culture around food in these places, it's probably mostly healthy. It's different across different areas of blue zone, whether it's parts of Japan or the Mediterranean or Costa Rica, right? They're eating different kinds of food. And so it's not the specific foods, but how do they often eat? I mean, you think about Mediterranean diets, places like Greece, Italy especially. What do we sort of culturally see? Family gatherings. Sure, they're bigger dinners, so maybe some wine with it, but there may be multiple courses. The meal may be consumed over a couple hours, but it's stereotypically quite social, right? At least traditionally. So I think a lot of these cultures are more and more influenced by Western culture. We're seeing changes. We're seeing rising obesity rates in the Orient, if that's an appropriate word, like, places like China and Japan or what have you, that is a thing. But if you look at the underpinnings of it, and again, that social aspect is really important. When I go to the gym, I mean, I have a decked out home gym. For time benefit, especially because I bought the pendulum squat, I can do my lower body training at home now. I have all the equipment I need. But most of the time, I still like driving to the gym. It's a 15-minute drive each way. Even if I don't see anybody in there that I know or I specifically want to interact with, I've still got people around, and I still feel like I'm in an environment around other people. And there's something I enjoy about that. I've always liked working out in commercial gyms. I've always liked generally being around people. Certain gyms feel better than others. That's been my experience for sure. But I still self-select to want to go out into that space versus be able to do what I could easily do in my home.
I mean, yeah, just the presence of other people's energy can help motivate you to actually like get in the sets and the reps, and then so and so comes over, and I mean, shoot, some of the greatest, most impactful moments here recently, it was just like a guy I've seen quite a bit. We have good, friendly conversation these days. And then he was deadlifting, and we're like, bro, like I was like, do you mind if I like just give you some insight? I kind of noticed something. He's like, yeah, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then someone else noticed, like, you like actually coach this shit, don't you? I was like, yeah, I try not to like butt in, but like I can see that this dude has even greater potential. And it's like, I'm like, what are you feeling? I just like want to know. And I was like, he's like, I like feel it in the front. I was like, you're deadlifting and you don't feel your ass at all. And then he's like, no. And I was like, walked him over to the hip thrust machine. He's like, I didn't even know this thing existed. I was like, bro, we've been here for how many years now? Like walking with each other. You haven't like tried this? He's like, nah, I just thought that was for the women. I was like, bro, this will change your life, just to like you up on stuff. And he's like, he comes back a couple of weeks later. He's like, yo, I pulled that 500 though. And I was like, awesome, dude. Like, and I mean, we all knew it. He's like, I think I got it. I was like, no, dude, you have it for sure. Like the way that the bar's breaking off the floor and all these things, like your upper limit is probably you just getting a couple little cues. He's like, this is all new to me. This is all me just self-taught. And I was like, yeah. So that environment is just so fun. And like what you said, it's like, as people that have been in it for a while, we're not judging people in that sense, especially if it's like quote unquote a bigger guy or a bigger girl. To me, I'm like, thank God you're here now. Like, good on you for getting in here, and good on you for just like taking that step in the right direction. And I think sometimes though those people think like, again, all eyes are on them. They're feeling some type of way, but realistically, I feel like the community as a whole, most people would be really willing to just kind of, again, not step on their toes, but give them some insight of like, hey, have you tried this thing out? Maybe this is something that you can incorporate. And like you just said, that like the community environment, I think, I mean, when they were trying to like rewrite CrossFit's like fitness in 100 words, they did throw that word community into it as like the biggest driver. The community of even a, you know, an EOS, which is what I go to, like, boom, now you're just starting to talk and learn what people do. And it gives you like this kind of sense of peace in a good way. You're like, I feel a little bit more protected because I know this person over there is a cop. I know this person over there does this and this person does this. And you just get to know different people in different walks of life. Hell, I found out that my dad was actually the coach of the husband of one of the girls that was working out after a few years of us talking, or like six months to a year. And I was like, what does your husband do? He does HVAC. I was like, oh, my dad's actually in need of it. My dad goes to text this guy and he's like, that's the guy I coached 20 plus years ago in baseball. And I was like, small fucking world. Granted, Vegas is like that, 2 million people, but you're like one person removed from finding someone you know. And I was like, how cool is that, Dad? Like, you get to reconnect. He gets to come and service your AC. And he now owns the business that used to sponsor your team. Crazy.
Small world. If we think about things that we can control in our lives, there are aspects of our community and environment we can't control. Can't, right? But there are things we can. And the gym environment that you self-select to is something that's within your control. You can certainly be thoughtful about the friends you're spending your time with. And this one's a tricky one, but I definitely noticed that the more I spend time around my friends who are good-natured, positive, because you have those friends who are a little too rough around the edges, the ones that are very loyal, that are non-judgmental, that are very supportive, the ones that go the extra mile and make a lot of effort, that stuff compounds in a very big way. There's something I really like highlighting is psychological safety. Like you alluded to this, but I'll say it explicitly. If the gym space you're in, if the other community spaces you're in, if the relationships you're interacting within are psychologically safe, it can lower the threat level. And I think we live in a world that magnifies threat, right? We see skyrocketing rates of anxiety, depression, other sort of things. And I think it's hard to pin down exactly what's going on, and I'm not an expert in mental health, but I think I think from what I understand about data is younger generations, and particularly younger women, seem to be having like much, much higher rates of anxiety, especially. And so what's the world that they're growing up in? A more digital world, right? Which I'm not interested in necessarily vilifying outright, but there's a different relationship than the world I grew up in. I didn't grow up with Facebook or like, in high school and someone deleting me from Facebook as a friend or, any of this sort of, or maybe something gets said online or, all of a sudden like something embarrassing, but ends up on a video and it's kind of like viral in your community. Like, I mean, I don't understand how like teenagers even survive like that sort of shit emotionally when that happens to them now. I'm like horrified at the thought. Let me get my thoughts back on track here. I think that even the bombardment of advertising and just everything else, and even just the act of scrolling. Have you ever sat and scrolled on Instagram? Scrolled on TikTok? I stay off of TikTok. You're scrolling on whatever social media feed, and now there's more feeds. And we're in different psychological modes. We're in different like modes, whether you're scrolling on Facebook versus LinkedIn or Twitter or X, whatever it's called now. But what I've noticed is, for sure, the algorithm will feed you more angry, outrage, negative stuff. That's just the bias that people interact with. So therefore, the algorithm, it'll feed it to you, especially if you interact with it anyway. So I've noticed that I feel stressed, a little fried, and more distractible after I've been scrolling. And when I don't, and if I sit down and read a book or I just do something else that just is not on a device, my mind is clearer. I can focus better. I find it very difficult upon scrolling to focus, to be clear of thought, or to turn around and like just focus my attention on a task in front of me, like trying to read a book. I feel very different psychologically between those two different modes. And so that for me is an incentive. The fact that I've got very clear on that, that's a very big incentive for me to limit the degree to which I scroll on certain things and different things. My feed on Instagram, generally speaking, a lot of fitness-based stuff, a lot of people I know I like that fine. Facebook's not bad. Twitter is quite awful because it's hyper politicized and it's just existentially threatening, like anger about everything, outrage. And I think consuming that stuff regularly is really toxic for your psyche and your soul. And I suggest to everybody is just like try to minimize that crap. And then you get narratives like, oh, you're supposed to stay informed or No, that's bullshit because I mean, there's
It's fine to you if it needs to.
and I agree with that. I think if it's something actually really important, it will someone in your world will discuss it with you. Like it'll be really, really, really mainstream and like pervasive. And otherwise, you have to question the veracity, the framing of everything. And I now I don't trust anything I see online anymore from almost any source, right? And that's but when you just don't plug into that stuff, guess what? You tune it out. And anytime that I've noticed I've been traveling or just too busy to even go near the stuff, and I'm like, I feel more at ease. And like, none of this shit's affecting my day to day in any way, shape, or form. Now they're going to be the people yell at you, but like, oh, you have the privilege of it. Fuck off with that shit. That's a bully narrative. Go literally fuck yourself with that garbage. That's your pet outrage. It is your whole identity is wrapped up in not only being outraged about shit, but also like in forcing that shit down everybody else's throats. And it's like, this is some of the most toxic garbage you can actually be around. And I ruthlessly curate those people out of having access to me. I have no tolerance for that crap whatsoever.
My
It's a good call.
friend's wife said it best. It's fucking toxic positivity. And that's what you're getting because these people are living these quote unquote picturesque, documentable lives, and you feel like you can't compete. And it's probably what's leading to just kind of that internal trigger of sadness. Like my life doesn't compare, it doesn't hold a candle to X influencer that I'm following. Yet again, like why? Like how is that really affecting you? You don't actually know that person. They're not in like your day to day. Like who are people that you could be framing in more positive light and having more positive relationships with? And I understand why for women it's probably a bit more because it's like it also has that shopping component, and now the ads have all these other elements that are going on. Oh yeah, look at a fly. It's disheartening, it's saddening, kind of in the sense that it does lead to that, and obviously like the impact it's having on the younger generation. It's funny enough you mentioned that about like TikTok, because TikTok, like as of today or the other day, actually have a mode now where it's like calm. They literally have like a built-in meditation app inside of TikTok where you can just like turn on that mode and like it'll like put you through breath work. So now they're like legit integrating like self-help stuff in addition to like the social media, which I found very fascinating.
I think they want you to just.
I'm calling bullshit. I'm calling bullshit on it. I mean, I think this is performative crap.
Probably.
I think it's like, because it goes back to the mode that people consume TikTok. If someone wants to do like meditative breathwork type stuff, they're not on TikTok. They'll literally go open an app designed for that stuff, or they'll go do a yoga class or whatever. They'll literally unplug, trying to get points within their detractors for, hey, look at this wonderful thing you're doing. Guess what? If you wanna, you're still on TikTok. They still understand they're trying to keep you on the app, and then they know that the moment that whatever's done, you're there on the app and you're going right back into the doom loop that it already is.
Calm you down. Anxiety again.
Absolutely, right? Like, I absolutely don't buy into this shit whatsoever. Who knows? Maybe some people will find some value in it. Awesome, whatever. The last fucking thing in the universe I'm going to do is go on TikTok and look for like something that's going to downregulate my nervous system, right? That's not how these things are designed. They're absolutely designed by people who study how to hijack and wind up your nervous system, right? And feed you dopamine and get you hooked on this sort of stuff. The way that people define addiction is tricky, but these types of social media algorithms are very addictive, right? They're designed to keep you on them. They're designed to keep you, I don't know if they say they're designed to keep you stressed out. I think stressed out is the result because they're not conducive to recovery or parasympathetic, like upregulation. And I think there's a lot of people are just tired and burnt out from long days at work, job is stressful, life, kids, etc. All the shit you're juggling. And then they're too fatigued to do, the cook at home. Okay, I get it. You're tired. Or they're too tired to go to the gym. I get it. Okay, I understand that. It's a narrative and it's valid one. But then end up on the couch. And maybe if you're sitting there and you're watching like really, really high-end television that's entertaining and you're there with your partner and it's something you're bonding over. Okay, cool, net positive. But if you're the person who ends up just like doom scrolling on your phone because your mind is too just cooked from everything else, and what are you doing? You're feeding it stimulation, which is ramping up sympathetic nervous system. And then, God forbid, some of that stimulation is whatever brand of existential threat and outrage that you tend to care most about. And so you're getting a pile of that. Or even like, I'll give you guys a good example. And people don't even think about this. So, I mean, I'm in Canada. I'm in Edmonton, Alberta. And so I had a couple of clients come in, say, 2 weeks ago. And they're back to back. And it's early in the day. And they're both just cooked. They're both just wound up. And I had the same conversation with them. And I asked them, I was like, well, what are the two big things going on right now? And neither one of them kind of like plugged in right away. So number one is they're both big Edmonton Oilers fans, and Oilers are in the playoffs. In the first round of the Oilers, they were looking terrible. And they ultimately did win the series. But I mean, it probably elevated all the diehard fans' blood pressure significantly. Same week, there's a build-up to a federal election. And most people, when it comes to politics, they have a side. They get very, very emotionally invested and very stressed out. And one of the clients was on one side of things and one was on the other. But I mean, going into it, it was looking, it could have gone either way. And so both of them were pretty like tired from that. One of them was actually going to the games here. There was alcohol involved, I think, in both cases. So their allostatic load, the just amount of like stress that they were experiencing, even though like cheering for your favorite sports team is supposed to be like really fun or whatever, stressing the fuck out, right? Raising their blood pressure, metaphorically, if not literally. And then, of course, they're all stressed out about the fucking election. So they're coming in and their sleep's not been great the last little bit. There's a bit of booze in there. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, I got to auto-regulate like what I'm doing with you in the gym because of the state you're in. But once I get to realize, like, oh yeah, no, holy shit, that makes a ton of sense. It's actually one of the reasons why, I mean, listen, enjoy sports. A lot of my friends love their sports. Like, I am long past having a strong emotional relationship with the outcome of the teams that I've traditionally grown up liking the most. And oftentimes those teams, like I grew up in St. John's, Newfoundland, so there's no major pro sports teams there. And for whatever reason, I mean, like there was only 2 Canadian baseball teams at the time. The Montreal Expos are long gone now, the Washington Nationals, so the Blue Jays. So I'm a more casual Blue Jays fan than ever. I saw a game when I was 13 years old in 1991, which was really cool. And I did get to watch on TV them win the World Series in 92 and 93. That's a long time ago since they've won the World Series, right? And they've been generally useless the last few years. And they would be really frustrating if I was like really gave much of a shit. Somehow grew up as a Calgary Flames fan. I remember watching the '89 Cup win on TV. Cool, awesome, right? Special moment. They haven't really been like super competitive in a meaningful way, getting deep in the playoffs for a long time. And it's just like I'm very ambivalent about it. I was very excited to see Alex Ovechkin like get the all-time goal scoring record. I thought it was really cool when Albert Pujols in baseball before he retired, he actually did get to 700 home runs and had one last good season after a few years of not being so good. So the individual accomplishments, I find, I'm great, but also not that emotionally invested in them. And for me, it's actually really important. And I mean, this is hyper specific, but it's a really important thing that I have to do. I have boundaries around this stuff where this doesn't take up a disproportionate amount of my time because I don't have time to watch live sports, or to be so emotionally invested that it's like costing me sleep and stressing me the fuck out. And if everybody can kind of look in their life and go, all right, well, where are these things that I'm outsourcing my identity to? Because that's part of it. You outsource your identity. And I think it's totally fine to be a passionate fan of something. There's certain bands I love, but you know what? There's less of bands don't generally win or lose. And it's not like there's the modern day gladiatorial arena, right? Which is both fun and entertaining, but it's also a giant distraction, right? It takes you away from whatever's going on.
Yeah,
there has to be a balance. And so someone's going to be like mad at me because like, oh no, I'm a big, like someone's a big sports fan. No, enjoy your sports. You know, if you gain genuine enjoyment out of it, great. Be alert to these things. Probably have some meaningful boundaries around like when this stuff tips over an edge to where maybe it's causing problems.
Yeah.
And just understand your own relationship with it. And then take that with every other thing in your life. I mean, I alluded to this with politics. I hate talking about it. I won't touch on my media. But for some people, politics is their gladiatorial arena, and it's their team, and win or lose, and their entire identity is chewed up in it. And guess what? People who are like that, I want nowhere near me. I can't stand people like that. They're awful to deal with.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. Man, it's so funny you talk about this because we're gonna bring it back to like identity and coaching.
Yeah.
And like one of the things that I love to coach, because I do a group coach with this bunch of guys, and I tell them like, are you guys really like allocating all your time? Like, is the thing holding you back like that Netflix binge that you so desperately need? Like, is that show so much more important than your goals? Like that you're willing to spend 3 seasons on it on a, I don't know, like Wednesday through Friday, and like you never got to your workout, never got to your food or whatever. Like you love it so much. How can we find balance in that, right? Kind of like what you're saying. And it's, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you hit it on the head. Is, can it fit? Can you check all of the other things that are important that make you feel good? And then is there room? Like, I enjoy RPG video games. Oblivion was just remastered and re-released after 19 years. And I loved it when I was younger. I used to play World of Warcraft years ago, but I can't be all in. And listen, there's a great sense of community there. That is epic shit. But, you know, I haven't played that in probably over 16 years. And I have incredible nostalgia. And it was important time in my life. It was valuable for what it was. I couldn't go back. I wouldn't have the time. I just couldn't be in there to like log on for raids in this team thing in real time. And shit me, was it ever like really fun? I still have people from there who are on my Facebook. One of them popped up recently. We were just having a little bit of a chat. Like that's very soul enriching. But my relationship with video games has got to be, okay, cool. I've got 45 minutes here. I've got the work done. I'm not behind on stuff. I'm going to log on. I'm going to go bust up this Oblivion gate in this game, and I don't have to rely on timing with anybody else. And all good. Then I'm going to go to the merchant and sell this junk or whatever. Then I'm going to log off. Cool. And that's the dose that I can do it at. And for me, I'm in control of my relationship with it.
Yeah. That's the important part. That's the thing. And I think, it's a struggle when I ask people, like, sometimes they have this immunity to change. Like, that's one of my favorite books around that concept, like immunity to change. And I always reference it because it's like pulling people back, or their behaviors, their people, their environment, their community. And sometimes it's these innate things that they just grew up with, beliefs that they don't even know about, and they're protecting all their current identity because the change that they want, or what they desire, even though they want it, they have some motivation. It's just not enough if you don't really change the way you think, change the way you want, your priorities, things like that. Yeah.
This is powerful. There's something huge in here. This might be the best piece of this. Is you said it. When you can recognize beliefs, narratives, and stories, those three words are interchangeable, that reinforce identity. And I like story, narrative, belief, because most people will speak in terms of absolutes, as identity as being this very concrete thing, and then they will use post-rationalizations, narrative stories,
Always justify things for ourselves, right?
justifications as to why we do the things we do. Now, sometimes there's several directions to this, but one of those things is, what are the beliefs that we've learned, observed from parents? What are cultural? What are handed down? And I like calling these things artifacts, and I like that label because then it allows us to take it and recognize it and separate it from us and our identity and go, does that really belong to me? And you start questioning it. And if you start having this conversation with someone, they're not going to go, oh my God, I'm going to let that thing go after 40 years. And then they're different. It doesn't work that way. But if you open the door to go, wait a second, maybe this doesn't belong to me. The way that my mom spoke about herself, the way that my mom, and I don't mean literally because my mom's pretty super awesome, but the way that my mom used language about her body, her weight, the dieting behaviors that my mom got into, which those might be artifacts of her mom or some cultural thing, or she may have watched too much Oprah, and Oprah cycling through whatever diet she was promoting at a given
Early
week.
2000s.
A quote that I can't remember who I can attribute this to, but Oprah is the greatest perpetuator of diet culture and also a victim of it, right? And that's true. But given the size of our platform, I mean, the amount of harm and the amount of like the belief and story that example that, and women probably more than men in this case, some men adopted because they were watching this. And Oprah is just an example of many other things within this idea, where someone believes that their self-worth is in their leanness. Someone believes that their self-worth, I've had female clients who, they have moms who have said like their self-worth is in their attractiveness to a man. And that opens up a whole big complicated pile of shit or whatever. I'm not going to get deep there. But when you can recognize that these are things that are artifacts of someone else's belief system and they don't belong to you, and you open the door to maybe letting go of them a little bit, then cool shit starts to happen, because then your identity can shift. And I think if people get really clear on what are objective truths and facts, and what are stories and narratives and post-rationalizations that we have crafted to protect our ego and protect our identity, you alluded to this, you said it right off the hop, and they might have served us. They may still be serving us in a way, and they may be protecting us from the discomfort of change or acknowledging that there's a problem. Yeah. But they're also, in this context, probably very maladaptive and hurting us. And as we get older, it hurts us more and more and more. So can people stop and recognize these things? And again, identify what are the stories that are holding us back, that are keeping us from changing? And can we pry that door open just a little bit, so that way someone is open to the idea of, maybe they're not ready for change, but maybe they're ready to say, this story doesn't make sense. I'm going to challenge it. This belief doesn't belong to me anymore. I'm willing to move on from it and see where it takes you.
All I can say here is that change happens when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. I was listening to a podcast the other day. They said that, and fucking resonated deep, and I was just like, well, I played it back like 4 times because it was like in 2 times speed.
Do you know what? It's a saying, but it's kind of like thinking, well, I need to wait until I hit rock bottom.
Yes,
before I'm willing to change. And you want to know what you tend to find when you hit rock bottom?
You're finally ready to make
the fall right through. No. All too often, people find out that there's deeper levels, okay? And unless someone, you can't trust, I believe this, you can't trust that you'll bounce when it gets bad enough, right? Because there are a lot of people, and it's not to contradict what you said, but it's to basically add context. And this what I'm about to say next is a very complex thing that I have zero expertise in. But if we could reliably have people reach a certain level of adiposity and metabolic unhealth, or a certain level of drug addiction where they just stop, change their behavior, a certain level of smoking and again, health decline, or alcoholism and health decline where they reliably stopped. A certain level of like life falling apart to where you change decisions and all of a sudden, stop living on the streets now. Again, that's a complicated one because
Yeah.
you layer in like addiction issues and mental health stuff or what have you. But my point is, we have a society around us of examples where the vast majority of people didn't bounce and change when they hit rock bottom. They went through the floor, and we can look around us all of the time. And that's what happens most of the time. So something else has to happen. And my hope is that people recognize when there's enough discomfort that they absolutely decide this is no longer serving me. I need to change. But I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
Well, when they get to that point, bounce only happens when you're ready to probably go back to what we've talked about this whole time, find a community. And you're probably outcasted from your previous one, which might have been your enabling parents if you were the drug addicted person, because the parents tend to just keep on giving people chances until they cut them off, right? And if it's for someone that was like, again, with the adiposity thing, it's the heart attack, it's that near-death experience. It like there's instances I feel like at which the bounce can happen, but unfortunately it's like legit, like on death's doorstep, where they have that like, I saw this image of God and he said I wasn't ready, and I know that I needed to go do these other things. And you're right, like for us as coaches to get people to make that change. How many times have people told you, yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm ready, and you're like, okay, I'm going to get everything ready to go for you, and then they ghost you, they're gone. You're just like, damn, all that time invested feels like waste because that person wasn't truly ready.
Because you're right, they weren't ready, and something about what the person is doing is still serving them or protecting them, even if it's hurting them. And what we all agree on here is that, and the reason why I kind of like push back at the specific statement was any implication that, let me gather my thoughts here, someone has to willfully decide to change as opposed to be a victim of circumstance and then think that somehow some external force is going to guide their hand and do it for them. You have to be an active participant who willfully wants to have a different outcome and focus on small, meaningful behavior change. And I think you said about community and putting yourself in and around people are going to help is one thing. Environment change is huge. Like, yes, fundamentally, environment change is huge. Anytime that I've had major problems in my life, like significant issues, and most of that stuff goes back a long time, the catalyst for change was and it was a very difficult thing. And I was very fortunate that I did have the means and resources to be able to do this, but completely changed my environment and the people I was around. And funny enough, I thought about this recently in a conversation I had with a guy I know, probably, this is a very long time ago, helped a number of other people where I was probably the catalyst for problems by leaving the environment. As much as helped me, I probably helped other people by removing myself from their environment too. It's funny when you think about it that way.
Oh, yeah.
That's actually powerful. That's actually super. It's true. It's very true. Like that age old saying of like, you're the 5 people you surround yourself with the most. Like, I mean, it is very much true because, I mean, human beings, if you got outcasted, you didn't have a place to eat, sleep, and whatever. I mean, life nowadays makes it easier. You could have everything. You can be self-sustaining, but you still have to, put on a face for work at least to make money. But hey, we got remote work too now, and you're still in your safe, cushy place, and you don't ever have to see any people. So it's like that. The impetus to change is definitely a lot harder, like you said, because if there is no incentive to change, or if there's no mirror to showcase like what you're doing, then you're kind of just stuck in your own silo and just like perpetuating your own behaviors. And it's hard if you can't. There's this guy named Gabor Mate. I love what he talks about around like uppercase, lowercase trauma, whatever he talks about. But he says, most people get hurt in relationships, and then most people try to find their life through being alone, when actually a lot of healing actually happens with people. And it's like, instead of trying to isolate yourself, go back to people and you'll find yourself healed, whatever that issue was. So I think
that makes sense.
I think having people around you, people you aspire to be. Marco says it the best, kind of like what they talk about in jiu-jitsu. So your person ahead of you, someone who challenges you on the same level, and then someone you're teaching. So it's like a mentor, partner, mentee, and I think you're become a conduit for leveling yourself up.
I like it.
Gotta do it. And I think to wrap this up, I'm just saying that statement. Seamus is your favorite boy. It's Tony Robbins, by the way, that said that quote. Yeah, and it just like resonated with me because it was just like, again, as I like go on these morning walks and I'm just trying to think and I'm just trying to get information into my ears about just new topics and ideas and people on other podcasts. I was like, man, like, why is that sticking with me today? Like, because I feel like it's like to be the person that can help facilitate change, I got to go and find things that I'm uncomfortable with, just like I do. There's a guy in one of my business groups. He does energy audits for people's homes, and I've been saying lately, I also do energy audits and environment audits for people, because you say you want to make this change, yet you're not changing anything in that environment, like we've talked about here, right? Like, how long have you gone to the same desk for, your job, and like the same office, like the same commute and all these things, yet you want to make this change? Well, by the way, maybe a standing desk is the start of that first change. Maybe you getting a walking pad, maybe you looking at how you can get some energy output in your day with all these menial tasks that I know that you're doing, because you can't bullshit me. You've offloaded at ChatGPT because you're college educated, and I know you're not trying to have extra busy work on your plate, right? But you know it needs to get done. So now it's like driving these kind of behavior changes through, like, I mean, not trying to be a hard ass. I'm just like, take a real hard look at the time that you're wasting, the doom scrolling, like we've mentioned here today. And how do we come to a conclusion that, again, can make sense, a step in the right direction? Give me fucking 10 minutes. Give me 20. What does 30 look like? What's your upper limit? I'm always trying to figure out what people like. My challenge to most people when I get started with them, I was like, do you even know how much you could possibly walk in one day? Find out. How do you feel? Was that a waste of your time? Or did you feel like it was a hard effort? 2.5 hours, 3 hours, I don't know. But you need to figure that out for yourself so that you can figure out, hey, where that sweet spot is. Because that will ultimately be the thing that I think will help people come to terms with the fact that, like, I do have more time than I've made it to believe when I first started with Marcos and or Seamus and or when I went to the clinic, whatever.
Mm.
And I'm always challenging people in that way. And I was like, look, everything seems impossible until you kind of finally get that like goalpost and then you move it again. So it's been really, again, I'm glad that it kind of got like you to say something different with it, because it got me thinking in that way too the other day. It wasn't so much that like it was the right thing being said at that moment. I was like, why do I keep going back to this? Why is that getting my mind racing about it? Because ultimately, all of us here as coaches are here to be the facilitator of that change for people. And I was like, how do I get that? Do I say this to people more, or do I find other ways to kind of approach it? And so that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I like how you said it.
I think there's a lot of stuff to it. Number one is, I bet you at some point in your life, or at several points in your life, it's meaningful because you experienced pain, discomfort about something, and you chose to change, but you chose.
Yes.
And that's the thing that I was sort of like, let's highlight. It's like, don't trust that you'll bounce. You have to be an active participate in deciding, I don't want this anymore. I like the analogy of an energy audit, because that's what this whole episode has been about. It's auditing the energy of the environment you're in, the communities you're in, the gym you're in, your kind of people and the shit that they get on with around you, the inputs that you're experiencing via all forms of media, social media, etc. It's all an energy audit.
Yeah.
And is this stuff adding to you? Is it draining you? Is it distracting you? Are you a willing participant in being distracted because you're unhappy enough with your circumstance that you would actually rather? And I like the euphemism of the modern gladiatorial arena. Why did that exist in ancient times? It was a distraction to appease the masses. And in a way, modern day sports, and I'm not criticizing, I think there's a lot of positives in sports. I think it's a great outlet for people to actually participate in. It's amazing. But in a way, it's a replacement for the warlike nature, the conflict-based nature of like young men with a lot of testosterone in our societies.
Yes.
And so now we have a proxy for it in our society. It's like us versus them. Although, I suspect sometimes there's higher stakes. You get like India and Pakistan playing cricket against each other, or like, South American soccer. Sometimes that shit could get real damn serious. But then every once in a while, like, and this is tragic shit, but you have like an altercation between a San Francisco Giant and a New York Dodgers fan some years ago, where a fan got, like, I think permanently disabled, like just from a punch to the head or something like that. It's just really sad when people take this shit way too seriously. But yeah, I still like the understanding this is still the modern gladiatorial arena, and I think that you can either outsource your identity and be distracted by it and kind of like what's lulled into being a bit more docile about all the other crap that's like not feeling good in your life, or you can use it as something that you have a controlled relationship with it. You can go in, consume it, step back out again, but you have clear boundaries around the health promoting behaviors, the socially enriching behaviors that are making you feel really good. And I think there's very different ways people consume anything. I think anything can be fine, or this is going to be another weird analogy. It's the person who can go and maybe like sit down at a video lottery terminal. I don't like gambling. I'm not drawn to it, but can have, hey, I'm going to gamble $100. It's entertainment. It's money spent as if I went to the movies or something else. Fine. Versus the person who, is vulnerable to addictive gambling, because addictive gambling is one of the most destructive things like you can ever experience.
It's the optimal frontier. The optimal dopamine frontier is what I call it. Basically, be able to get what you want without the side effects. It's like, hey, you had a scoop of ice cream, not the whole freaking tub, on your date night, or hey, it's one Advil, not 10 Advils to take care of that headache you're never gonna have. It's the optimal frontier.
It's a perfect analogy for the way that we eat food. And I mean, again, like that's too broad a conversation about like food noise and what have you. And we did never get into GLP-1 stuff, but this has been a fun conversation. I appreciate you guys having me on. So I hope that this is a little bit more nuanced, thoughtful, meta. And I kind of hope people kind of take a walk through, especially if anything that we've talked about makes you a little bit uncomfortable with your relationship with the various forms of media, the way that you interact with people. And if it made you uncomfortable, ask yourself why. What was it about that sort of was a bit of a threat to your identity and your status quo? And maybe sit with that a little bit. Put the device away. Don't get distracted. Go for a walk and spend some time with that thought and ask yourself why. And you can just decide it. No. It's like the meme of Principal Skinner is kind of looking. It's like, no, it's not the children. The children are wrong. It's not me, right? You can do that if you want, right? You can hide from the reality, or you can kind of go, wait a second, there's something here, and maybe you're not ready to change, but contemplating awareness of a problem and then starting to contemplate it is still an important step along the way to change.
There you go. Contemplative state. Guys, thank you all for listening. Andrew, again, thank you for your time. I know we
My
usually
pleasure.
leave some leeway to chat at the end, but we took up the entire time and we're super appreciative and got some nuanced conversation. So until next time, Macro Perspective peeps, we'll see you on the channel. We'll see you on wherever you guys are following us. And like Andrew said in the beginning, we would really appreciate some feedback, some comments, some likes, some subscriptions, whatever that would be. Help us grow.
Take this and think about the person in your world who kind of frustrates you a little bit, but you love and you care about, and you got that trust, and you're like, this person needs to fucking hear this episode. Slip this into their text and go, hey, check this out. You might actually get something out of this. I found this really interesting, right? Like bait and switch them a little bit and see what happens. Okay. Share this. It helps the guys out, reach more people, change more lives. Thank you.
Thank y'all.